some of you know my history and my background working at Vista Assembly of God and New Venture Christian Fellowship for 7 years before that. And at Vista, we took over a campus in Carlsbad for about 4 years or so. And Pastor Ron and I, we had a great ministry there, grew to about 120 people, had great ministries, great group of people. It was wonderful. But in October of the last year that we were there, the lead pastor had said, we want to try something new. Why don't you bring your congregation back to the main campus, and we can work at getting you to take over the church when I retire as a senior pastor. Great thing. And so we made the transition. It was pretty difficult, but we got through it. And as I made my journey back to Vista, things didn't turn out the way that they should have. And promises were made, promises weren't kept. It's all behind us, and there's lots of forgiveness and acceptance. My heart is good. I don't need counseling. We're good. And that was 9 months. From the time we left Carlsbad to the time I left Vista, it was a period of 9 months. And we decided, well, if senior pastor's not going anywhere for the next decades, we need to follow our calling to be lead pastors. So we opened it up, and we started looking all across the country to see where God would plant us. And doors were closing. And as time went on in our search, we ended up getting let go prematurely at Vista, and unfairly, it was unfair. And so that put us in a very unique circumstance. So as we prayed, I remember we were at the Diaz's house, and we had friends gathered around us, and I just remember their hearts and their faces. They all said, stop looking across the country. This is your home. We'll help you. We'll be your worship leaders. We'll help you. We'll help in this area. And I could not say no. Now, I'm a teacher. I love to teach the Bible. I'm not a church planter. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a businessman. I can't even say the word. I'm not a businessman. I don't like taking risks like that. But when I saw the hearts of my friends, I said, how can I say no? And I felt at peace about it. And so we launched August 20th, which was exactly to this day, 9 months ago, we launched Tribe Church. So it was a period of 9 months from Carlsbad to leaving Vista, which is like a pregnancy. And it was a period of 9 months from starting in August till today, where I'm about to explain what God has done for our church. We're getting rebirthed into a great new opportunity. And so we started looking, and things weren't happening, so we said, we're just going to plant here. What are we going to do? Well, normally as a church plant, you're supposed to get a core group of people in a nice, comfortable living room, and you get a couple of families that got a lot of money, and they sow into it and to help you out. And the typical route of church planting is you have a denomination or a very healthy church that's going to launch you. A lot of the times, like the Assemblies of God or the Foursquare Church, they'll actually give the pastor a full year's salary to help them work full-time at the church and get the thing started off nice. Sometimes there's free buildings that they can meet in. And then you take that little group in your living room and you grow to about 30 people, and then you go and meet at a location. Either you lease it or you take over a church. And then you grow the church to now where the pastor can come on full-time. You have other leaders, and the ministry just starts growing. All that stuff, that's what's supposed to happen. That didn't happen with us. Tribe, we said, we're just going to bypass all of that and just launch. So on our first day, August 20th, we had 73 people show up to our first service. And we just had a little prayer meeting and believed God. And my wife and I, we took our savings because we didn't have anybody helping us out. We didn't have any denomination. We took our savings to start the 501c3 nonprofit organization, to pay for any resources, any materials that we needed to get this church up and going. And we said, we're putting it all on the line. We've never taken a risk like this before in our lives. Scared us like nothing else, and we just launched it. And 73 people that day. And since August, we've seen our ups and our downs with church attendance, because we live in California, and there's always something cool to do, or somebody's sick, or there's a sporting event, or something like that. And so we've been all across the place. But the last couple months, we've really been, as a church, paycheck to paycheck. Finances have gotten tighter and tighter, and we've seen spikes of 70 people, drops of 25 people, and finances are getting harder and harder. So a couple weeks ago, the leadership, we got together and we decided we really need to look for a better venue. The church pays a housing allowance for me to cover my rent, and we also pay the rent at this place, which is $3,000, $3,500 a month sometimes. It's just out of control, out of this world. And so we said, we need something a little bit cheaper, and we need something with a better visibility and better location. Because we're tucked all the way back in the end of Vista. And I know many of you come from other cities, and it's another journey getting off the freeway to getting here. I know it's a travel. So we started looking at all the people that we had contacts with. And as a minister, I have lots of pastor friends. So I started going to my pastor friends and saying, hey, do you have something available? Maybe a night service. And then I remembered my friend at Hope Church, Pastor Matt Palm. I remember 8 months ago, we had a conversation, and he says, well, if things ever get tough, I do have an open night service, and you can come and rent here. We'll give you a little break on the rent. You can have a Thursday night and have small groups. You'll have access to all of our grounds, our volleyball courts and our baseball fields and all that kind of stuff. I said, all right, well, I'm going to put that in my back pocket if you don't mind, and just see how things go. So I remember that he gave me that option, and I called him again. I said, hey, do you still have that night service available? And he says, why don't you come to the office? Let's just pray and let's see what God has and see what's available. So I went to his office after work one Wednesday, still in my smock and the things that I wear for work, all sweaty and gross. And so I sat in his office and we began this conversation. He goes, God's been doing something unique at my church. We have a 9 a.m. traditional service where all the people who live in like Quails Ranch and all the beautiful areas of Shadow Ridge, they come, they want their simple 1 hour traditional service with their hymns. Then we have a contemporary service at 10:30. Then we have a Spanish service at 1 o'clock. Then we have a Russian service at 6 o'clock. So they have multiple congregations meeting under one roof at Hope Church. And you know what I'm talking about. Hope Church right there in Mar Vista in the 78 says Hope right across, big steeple. And so I said, oh, really? I said, so you really don't have any options to really rent out? It looks like you're pretty full. And he goes, well, actually, we just lost our worship pastor. And so now our second service, our contemporary service, has gotten kind of small. So we were thinking of actually combining that with the 9 a.m. and at least a 10:30 spot open. I said, shut your mouth. So he said, why don't we pray? Maybe that spot is open specifically for Tribe. I said, really? He goes, yeah, you can rent, so we'll have a traditional service, Tribe with this contemporary music and younger families, and then we'll have Spanish, which there's 60% Hispanic in Vista, and then we have a Russian congregation. It's like we're hitting every demographic spread out with 4 different congregations under the same church roof. I said, that's exciting. That's super exciting. And so we brought it to our leadership team. They thought it was a great idea. And so we actually have some pictures I want to show you of the church and how absolutely beautiful it is. Before I tell you further details. That's not what it looks like, that's a computer screen. And the Church of the Nazarene, they were birthed out of the Azusa Street Revival. So they're very Pentecostal, just like us. Pastor Matt's heart is all about unity. They prophesy, they heal the sick, they walk in the power of the Holy Spirit. It's a beautiful campus of 15 acres. If you want to start at the top. No, that's the end. All the way at the top. Number uno, right there. So that's what the church sanctuary looks like. It's brand new floors, brand new chairs, 300 seats in the sanctuary itself. Stained glass, which is near and dear to my heart. Full sound system, so we would not have to set anything up or break anything down. We just get our coffee and, oh man, the worship team's excited for that. Keep showing some pictures here. That's a picture from the stage. Sound booth, so forth, the lobby.
Sorry. You just say when.
Go ahead. This is a picture of the lobby here, which is connected to the bathrooms and to our children's rooms, which the children's rooms, go ahead. This is where our elementary kids can meet, where Angela and her team are going to have a blast raising up some young leaders. Go ahead. This is a secondary children's room if we have an overflow or we need a place to pray before service. Go ahead. This is our nursery. They actually have the Spanish pastor's daughter who leads their worship. On second and first service, she actually leads up the nursery. So we're going to have the ability to have full service care for our babies from birth all the way till kindergarten, all service long, which is phenomenal. So this is the toddler side. Go ahead. This is the sleeping baby side. It's split by a half wall. And there's also a bathroom, so the kids never have to leave. They're safe, secure, and a clean and wonderful area. And this is our kitchen, amen, where we have full access to, we're going to throw down on some tacos at Trump. That's how we do it. Go ahead. This is their volleyball courts, where we have full access to, and some baseball courts.
That's a 78, right?
And that's a 78 freeway right there, so you can see how close it is. You get off on the off-ramp, you make 2 turns, no lights, no stop signs, and you're at the church. We can have better visibility or a better location.
Exit.
Yeah.
Mar
Good.
Vista.
Mar Vista. Mar Vista's the exit.
Mar Vista.
Yep. And then here, we'll take a minute here. This is the plans. If you notice on the right-hand side, that right there is the current sanctuary. This is the plans that they want and what they developed back in 1991. They had a dream to have multiple sanctuaries on their location, and they had no idea why God was saying that. Flash forward 20 years, now there are 4 different congregations coming to this property. So one sanctuary is going to have room for 300 people. The new sanctuary is going to have room for 1,000 people. And that little building right there is a gym slash theater slash multi-purpose room slash preschool that can fit 900 people. So he's like, this meeting went on for like 3 hours, and we're dreaming. He goes, you know, you guys may rent for us for a little while, grow like crazy, and then say, hey, we want to go get our own building. But maybe we love each other so much and we can work side by side. You have your own organization, I have my own organization, but we all meet at the same place, and maybe in the future we could just have multiple sanctuaries and build. So there's a possibility in the future where we can actually join forces with them in the building project and have multiple congregations and demographics meeting in the same place. It continues even further. He says, if you really like us, we can actually hire you, Rudy, as a teaching pastor for the Nazarene Church, which means you'll get access to benefits like medical, dental, vision, retirement. Your son can go to Point Loma Nazareth University at a great rate and first in line. You can get another degree at that. You can get your Master of Divinity and so forth. And we have some things that are also a special blessing for you as well. We want to go to the next one? This here is a beautiful 2-bedroom adobe house that sits at the very top of the hill. He says, I live in a 4-bedroom house at the top of the hill, but we have an empty 2-bedroom house. Your family is more than welcome, because I know you work 2 jobs, and I know this has been real tough on you. Your family is more than welcome to move in for free. Free rent, free electricity, free water, free Wi-Fi, and there's a Verizon cell tower right next to our house. Come on, 4 bars all the time. That's amazing. I said, are you kidding me? He's like, our hearts is to see multiple congregations have a fighting chance to see success and to grow. And we don't know what God can do. We don't know what he's saying. We don't know how this is going to turn out. But he says, you can rent here. We can see about getting you on staff. And you're more than welcome anytime to move into the parsonage. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the blessing of God. And we can show the last 2 ones. This is the view out of our living room and our front porch. That's the front porch. Looks down at the church, 15 acres, see all of Vista. And then the last one is just the view outside of our living room. So that's where I'll have coffee and read my Bible in the morning. See all of Vista and pray over everybody. So God has done some tremendous things. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. There's a huge opportunity for our church. Have a break on our rent. We're going to be in a beautiful facility. Have access to a wonderful church ground. Our kids are going to be well taken care of. We're going to be able to see new people coming in just because we're off the street, and we'll have a healthy place for them to grow. We can have small groups at this location. I get an office at this location. We can throw down some softball games at this location. There's amazing possibilities, and we felt the Spirit of God, and their board made a unanimous decision. Our board made a unanimous decision. So starting June the 2nd, we're going to start having services. So in 2 more weeks, we're going to start having services at Hope Church. And we'll have our tribe name out there, multiple churches, and one heart. It's going to be phenomenal.
Amen.
So this is one historic and miraculous point in the story that is called Tribe. This is not the end of our story, but this is a pivotal moment of our story. And today I wanted to share the message, the power of your story. The power of your story, because our stories are powerful. And our stories, we may think, has an end, but in reality, God has a new wave of glory after new wave of glory. And you know, stories can be twisted. Stories can get rough. I remember after I was unfairly let go, there was a sermon preached after I left a week after. They had told my story the complete wrong way. Twisted and different, and I'm not bitter about it, but I remember getting so upset. I wasn't upset because of lies. I wasn't upset because of manipulation. I wasn't upset of being used to protect one's own needs. I was upset because nobody has the right to tell my story except me and God. I was so upset that somebody was trying to change my story. You can't change my story. It's a story that God has given to me. It's a story that God is writing. And stories are powerful. I remember I shared with you the story of Gabe and Rebecca Lyons, a couple that they found out when they were pregnant that their child was going to be born with Down syndrome. And he found out that when families know and hear the news about their babies being born with Down syndrome, 9 out of 10 are actually aborted. So if you see somebody with Down syndrome, they are 1 in 10 that actually made it. And he says, well, what can we expect? And the doctor said all these things that weren't really true, that baby's only going to live to 30 years old, and you're going to have all these complications, and it's going to ruin your life, and all these hardships that weren't true. And there was no good news out there about having a baby with Down syndrome. So they invested lots of money to do something very, very professional. And they began making these little books that can go into doctors' offices that share their story of how they raised their child and they had a wonderful life. And it was done very well. So now they're putting resources in all these doctors' offices all across the country, and it's painting a new story of hope. And the rates are going down. So somebody who says, here's a problem, here's an issue, this is a story that's being told, and it's not the right story. So they wrote a new one. And God began to change some things. And you and I have the incredible opportunity, not only in our church's tribe, but in our personal stories, to write a story, to change the direction of history, to see God do powerful things to us and through us. And I want to share a story that was rewritten immediately, and a person put into ministry immediately, found in the book of Mark. So if you have your Bibles, go with me to Mark. We're going to chapter 5. This is right after Jesus calms the sea. And he approaches the demonic, which you guys have heard the story, but there's something I want to point out that will bless us here this morning. Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 1. And this is Jesus and the disciples on the Sea of Galilee, going from the Jewish side over to the Decapolis side, which was the Greek side. It was the unkosher side of things. Is where the demonic was at. Verse 1. They came to the other side of the sea, into the country of that word. And when he got out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. And he had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one was able to bind him anymore with a chain, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been torn apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. That's a scary thing. Somebody walking through the tombs. Can you imagine, like Eternal Hills on El Camino? You see some dude ripping chains off of his body in a cemetery at nighttime. Creepy. Verse 5. Constantly, night and day, he was screaming, and he's screaming in the tombs, my Lord, screaming among the tombs and in the mountains and gnashing himself with stones. Seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before him. Pause right there. That's the type of authority that you need to have when it comes to the demonic. If you're walking by and you see like a psychic card reading shop or a Christian Science bookstore or whatever, you shouldn't say, oh, I got to stay away because I don't want any bad juju jumping on me. No, you got the Spirit of the living God in you, where demons come and bow down to the name of Jesus. And so he ran up and he bowed down before him in verse 7. And shouting with a loud voice, he said, what business do we have with each other, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, by God, do not torment me. For he had been saying to him, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. And when he was asking him, what is your name? And he said to him, my name is Legion, for we are many. That's anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000. This man had over 2,000 demons inside of him. Now there was a large herd of swine, which again is unkosher for the Jews, swine feeding nearby on the mountain. And the demons implored him, saying, send us into the swine so that we may enter them. And Jesus gave them permission. And coming out, the unclean spirits entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, and they were drowned in the sea. Now, this is somebody's pigs. That's somebody's money. That's somebody's bacon. And the demons just killed 2,000 of them. Somebody lost a whole lot of money. And that's pretty scary. Can you imagine your house falling down or your business being lost? Or it's like, what am I going to do now? So this is not a great thing for the people of the Decapolis. The herdsmen ran away and reported it in the city and the country, and the people came to see what had happened. They came to Jesus and observed a man who had been demon-possessed, sitting clothed in his right mind. The very man who had a legion, and they became frightened. Those who had seen it described to them it had happened, that the demon-possessed man and all about the swine. And they began to implore him, Jesus, to leave the region. Like, whoa, this is crazy, this is scary, and our pigs are dying. Jesus, please leave, please leave. And he was getting into the boat, and the man who had been demon-possessed was imploring him that he might accompany him. So the demon-possessed man, now totally free, totally set free from these demons, says, Jesus, just take me with you. I don't want to stay here anymore. I've been set free. I want to be with you. And this is amazing what Jesus says to him. He did not let him. Here's a guy who wants to be discipled by Jesus, and Jesus said, nope. But he said to him, go home to your people and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you. And the demon-possessed man went away and began to proclaim. He became a preacher just like that. He began to proclaim in the Decapolis what great things Jesus had done for him. And check it, everyone in the whole city was amazed. Jesus made a prophet, preacher, evangelist in a moment. Somebody gets saved, in a moment, their story has been changed. And in a moment, because their story has been changed, now they can begin to write the course of their own history with God, and their own history in the ministry. And here this guy has been freed up. He says, well, I want to go with you, Jesus, because it's a little crazy over here. Demons be jumping on me, and I don't like that. Can I just go with you, where you're going to be doing ministry and healing people? I want to be close to you. And Jesus says, no, you got a story to tell. You got a story to tell. If you have a story, guess what? You're a preacher. If you have a story, guess what? You're a minister. You can invite a coworker over for dinner and not have even read the Bible before, and just share with them your story and lead them to the Lord. You don't have to be in the ministry. You don't have to have a degree in the Bible. You just have to have a story. But see, not only do we have a great God who's blessed us with miracles and testimonies and a great story, we also have an enemy that wants to twist and pervert and block us from seeing that story come to fruition. And so we experience trials of many kinds. We go through circumstances in life that try to distract us and derail us from this amazing destiny that God has for us. And like that demon-possessed man, one encounter with Jesus can set you up to begin to write a story like you've never believed before. So a couple things, if you're taking notes, I want to leave with you as an encouragement this morning. The first one, if we want to write the story that God has for us, is that we need to embrace who we are. Embrace who we are. Our identity, one of the most powerful things that we have. I remember a few years ago, I was asked to speak at the chapel at Tri-City High School. And they said, we want you to be you, have your tattoos, just come and bless the kids who come from all different backgrounds, all different churches, like 300 people in the room. So I went and I said, I'm going to do something fun. So they don't know who I am. They're not in my ministry, only a couple students. And so I began to share a fake testimony. I started sharing and telling them about how I was raised on the streets, how my parents broke up when I was young, how I was in a gang by the time I was 13, all these things. And these kids are like, oh, I painted the most elaborate 10-minute story. You could hear a pin drop in the room. And then right when it got super dramatic, like people holding back tears, I said, and everything I just said is a lie. And they just erupted in laughter. And I said, I told you that for this reason. So many Christians have these amazing testimonies of getting off of drugs and getting out of the gang life, or how they saved their lives. These phenomenal I saw angels at the foot of my bed stories. And I just grew up in the suburbs and never had any trouble. I was always a good Bible kid, and I had great parents, and I don't have a testimony. No, if you can live life connected to God, basically you don't need a test to have a testimony. You don't have to go through hell in order to have a story. In fact, if you can go through not doing drugs, not having sex before marriage, not getting in a gang, that's a greater testimony sometimes than the ones that went through hell. See, we have a story to tell, but it has to be our story. If you went through hell, testify. If you were raised in the suburbs with a silver spoon in your mouth, that's your testimony. Come on, be a prosperity preacher. You have a story, but you have to own it. It has to be your own story. And we have to be sold on our identity. We have to know who we are. We're sons and daughters of God that have been given all the blessings of heaven with the same power that rose Christ from the grave living inside us. We have to own that. You know, sometimes I read books that I disagree with and that I know I'm going to disagree with because it fortifies what I really believe. You know, when they say the power of God is not available anymore today, it passed away with the apostles in the first century. I said, lies. No. And it fortifies what I really believe. I so disagree with it because I'm so passionate about the truth. I even had a pastor locally. He's got a big church in Carlsbad, and he called me when we were going through all this transition. And he says, maybe you shouldn't start a church. Maybe you're not meant to be a senior pastor. Maybe you should just get under a church, and a healthy church. You've been through some unhealthy things in church life. Just get under a nice, healthy pastor and see what God has for you. And I'm on the phone like, I got so mad. I was like, You're supposed to encourage me, Pastor. You're supposed to like pump me up, and you're basically saying it's not happening. Like my high school guidance counselor, he said, well, you're getting an F in history, but you're getting an A in auto shop. It'd probably be better if you're a mechanic, not a pastor. Okay, well, I got a 3.8 in Bible college, so whatever. Okay, I did better in Bible college. They went up against something I knew was burning in my heart. My true identity. I was born a preacher. I was born to be on the stage. It's what I love. It's what I dream of. It's what keeps me up at night. It's all I've ever wanted to be since I was 15 years old. So when someone says you're not meant to be, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Because I know who I am. And it actually made me dig deeper. I said, I'm going to listen to more podcasts. I'm going to get more leadership training. I'm going to study my Bible even more. I'm going to seek more revelation from God, because this is going to be a greater testimony to my story when someone says it can't happen, and then it happens.
Amen.
We have to be solid on our identity. So the first thing in our story is we have to embrace who we are. The second thing is that we have to erase some things in our story. We need to erase. So embrace, then erase. How many people have Instagram or Snapchat? I hate when my wife secretly films me and she puts like panda ears on me. So dumb. But Instagram and Snapchat, they have this ability, and Facebook, to do what's called the story, right? And for a couple seconds, you can film, this is what I'm eating for breakfast, isn't it cute? Hashtag Eggs Benedict, you know? And you got panda ears on you or whatever. That's what we call stories. They're not stories though. They're not stories. They're actually scenes. And in this life with God, we need to know truly what's just a scene and what's really a story. And the end of our story is not the end of the story sometimes. When your marriage fails, when you go bankrupt, when your business fails, that's not the end of the story. It's just the next phase, the next scene. It's only a scene. And what I love about my wife and her social media, because when I go on Facebook, I get depressed. I'm like, oh my gosh, these complainers. The world's not that bad, grow up, you know, it's just one negative thing after another. Like, ooh, that was inappropriate. It's like, it makes me sad after I go through my Facebook feed. And Nikki, she's like, what are you talking about? Just delete the bad stuff and keep the good stuff. She says, when I go through Facebook, it's like a morning devotional for me. All my friends that post these cute little scriptures, and like pastors who have these short little clips. It's a devotion to her, because she got rid of some scenes, but she kept others. So in our lives, we got to recognize when we're going through a very difficult time, we need to tell ourselves this is only a scene. And this may be just where the plot gets really dramatic, but the story's going to end well. This is just a scene. And you may have scenes in your past that you just don't want to relive anymore. I'm telling you, the Spirit of God and His wisdom can wash your brain, can wash your memory, and you can have scenes that can go away and find healing in your heart you've never experienced. But we have to know who we are and our identity. We have to embrace who we are, embrace what God has done for us, so that we have peace and we have rest and we have trust, and we can say, that was not me. What that person did to me and what that person said to me is not who I am. And you can stand fortified to erase those bad scenes and keep the true stories of your destiny and what God has for you. James 1:2 says, consider it all joy when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith produces endurance. When you face a scene in your life that is difficult, say, God, what are you going to teach me? Because I know you have an answer. And I know my story is going to end with a happy ending. I know you got that under control, but right now, I'm falling apart. So I need your supernatural joy, your supernatural faith, and I need you to show me what you're teaching me, because you're going to learn something. The testing of your faith is going to prove what's really in your heart. And the testing of your faith is going to show and reveal what God is really teaching you. So erase. The last thing is you have to express. So we embrace who we are, we erase the bad things, and we express the authority that God has given to us to write our own story. See, not only is God your protector and your provider, but He gave you power. He gave you power. So when you got a bad scene that showed up in your life, you need to say, I got authority. Devil, you are not going to win. I can walk right through this with the peace of God supernaturally, and I'm going to see on the other end and thwart the enemy's plans. Because we can write our own story. We need to express the authority and the power that God has given to us into our stories, even into the bad times. There's a movie, I'm not sure if it already came out. I heard it on a podcast that was broadcast a few months ago, so I don't know if they released it yet, but it's called Impossible. Have you guys heard this? The Impossible movie? So it should be out in theaters nationwide, if not on DVD already. But it's a story of a mom who had a 14-year-old son in Kansas City. And it was extremely cold that winter, and so one of the lakes actually froze over. So the son, 14 years old, and a couple other buddies, they decided to go play on the ice. And of course, they were cautious and they played and had fun, came back home and they said, hey, our time on the lake was amazing. Let's go do that again tomorrow. So they did. But because the day before was so comfortable, they got a little riskier. So they went out a little bit further, and sure enough, this mom's little boy, 14 years old, fell right through the ice. And his two friends came rushing to try to help him, and they fell through the ice. And so now you got 3 people in the middle of the lake, nobody around them. And so one of the kids was able to get out and run and go find somebody to give him a hand. And by the time they get back, one person was in critical condition, but her son had actually passed away. He had been under the water for an hour. Under the water for an hour with no oxygen, no heartbeat, dead. They rushed him to the hospital and put him in a special wing where they can just try anything. The mom gets the news that your son is not breathing in the ER. Can you imagine? So she calls everybody that she knows. She's frantic. She's racing to the emergency room. And she gets there and they say, we just don't know. He's been without oxygen for an hour. He's going to be brain dead even if we can't get a heartbeat back. And she says, you guys are trained. You know what to do. You do everything humanly possible to make sure that my son is brought back to me. So the doctors went to town working on him. They're doing everything that they know how. She gathers her friend, and in the emergency room, she is shouting and declaring and prophesying over her son. After being without oxygen for an hour, they get a heartbeat. Now there's a heartbeat. He's critical, but he's actually back to life. They're shocked. And so they continue to pray, and he says, ma'am, I just really need you to know that he's been without oxygen so long. His organs are failing left and right. Do you really want to go through this process? You do everything for my son. For a process of 14 days, they're in the hospital, and the pastor's coming in, the mom is coming in, friends are coming in shifts, non-stop declaring, prophesying over their son. Today, perfectly fine, perfectly healthy, nothing as if he had never even gone under the ice.
Wow.
See, the story was, this is impossible. He's been dead for an hour. He can't come back to life other than something supernatural, which we believe in.
Amen.
But she said, that's not how the story is going to end. This is not how the story is going to end. And she took her authority, that the same power that rose Christ from the grave, the same thing he told the disciples, heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out demons, is the same authority that you and I have. And she contended for her son, and she got her son back. She rewrote the story of the destiny of his life. And I want Tribe to be this place, this center of reformation, this house of revival, that people begin to understand their true stories of what God has put in your heart, dreams and talents and ideas and ministries in your heart, and to see that come to fruition. But what we're going to see in our ministry is one story after another story after another story being written and rewritten. And we're going to see something powerful happen in the city of Vista and all North County. Because people are going to dream and believe that God is above the natural, and that I can agree with heaven to rewrite the story of my destiny. It's really easy, guys. If every one of us simply took a year to focus on just one person, we would double our church in a year. If we just had one visitor come in a week and we just loved on them, spoke into their identity, loved on them to show them they can rewrite the story and they hang around, we're going to build a body and an army of soldiers that are carrying the love and the power of God, and we can express that naturally and restfully, exactly as God made us to be, to see him do something powerful. Our situation, our country, our society, that's not the end of the story. We are the storytellers of God that can rewrite history if we will believe. So I want to pray over us. I want to pray over our dreams. I want to pray over our ideas. I want to pray over our situations, that we can contend and we can believe with heaven that nothing is impossible for God. So Father,